Chapter 6, Writing. Pyper, San Diego. Arden had his back to me, and I was gripping his sides tightly. We lost some time yesterday when we slept late, and this resulted in us waking late as well. The good thing was, Arden was an excellent tracker. And now, we were back, a few miles away from the Canellan soldiers. Suddenly, Arden stopped the horse, and I lurched forward, pressed against his back. "Why did you stop?" He exhaled. "I don't have a plan, Pyper."
"Neither do I admitted.
"What do we do now?" "I guess staying as close to them as possible without getting noticed is our best chance." "Where do you think Mayo went?" I paused. Mayo's such a stubborn boy, but I'm sure he's racking his brains to figure out a way to follow us. He has probably talked the rest of the gang to track us down. "Are you sure?" "Because we can use Miro's power," Arden said so matter-of-factly that I blanched. "Do you know that you're suggesting murder?" I said. Arden shrugged. "It's not murder if the soldiers are going to kill us anyway. It's self-defense." "It's premeditated." "That doesn't sound like self-defense to me." Arden frowned. "We've no choice, chum. Besides, Goemi can revive them. All we have to do is tie them up when they're all passed out, and Goemi will give them back their lives. Then we run." It was not a good plan, but still a plan. One that could work if only Miro were here with us. Right now, we have to ensure that we're always close by. If an opportunity opens up, then we can rescue Kino. Who knows? Maybe a chance will open up for us. "The gods used to favor me in the past," he said. "Do you think Mayo and the group will come after us?" "Maybe. Except for Nia," Arden answered. "Anyway, I don't know if she would be of much help. She doesn't remember anything. She's very pretty, though." "Pretty?" "I find it highly inappropriate that you should talk about someone being pretty at a time like this." I frowned. "We need all the powers we can get. Anything would help us." Arden shrugged. "All right, maybe that was inappropriate. Do you want to visit their camp tonight?" I asked. "We can both be invisible and at least see how Kino is doing." Arden looked grim and determined. He pulled down the tip of his hat. "Let's move a bit closer to their camp so we won't have to walk very far later." I nodded. Arden kicked at the horse again, and it neighed. "Shh," Arden said. "Quiet, or you'll bring us trouble." As though the horse understood, it stopped neighing before it started prancing. Arden was the one who made the horse invisible in the meantime. Later, it will be my task to do that. When we were more than a mile away, Arden stopped the horse again. "This is it," he whispered. He jumped from the horse, and his gooey figure landed on the ground. I did the same. "Wait here," he said. "I'll tie the horse, and we'll start out for the soldiers' camp." I watched as Arden walked away with the invisible horse and tied the rope against the tree trunk. When he was finished, he walked back towards me. "Let's go." This time, his voice sounded uncertain. I followed his lead. "Are you scared?" I asked. "Terrified." "Me too," I said. Arden sprinted lightly, and I traced his steps. When we got closer to the camp, he stopped. "Over there," he said, pointing to a large tree. "I think we can manage to get there without being caught." "How will Kino know we're right behind him? I don't want him to think that rescue's not coming." Arden did not answer me right away. Instead, he walked towards the tree and started climbing. "I have an idea," he said. The next thing I knew, I was dangling on a vine while Arden was on the other end, working the vine from the top of the tree. He chose a sturdy branch that was thick enough to support both our weights. I held my breath as slowly, Arden lowered the vine. If I were close enough to Kino, he would be able to copy my power and he would see my gooey figure. When that happened, he'd know it was me. 2 soldiers were guarding him. When I was close enough, I saw his bruised face. His right eye was half closed as a serious wound festered under his eye. His usually unkempt hair was even more disheveled, and his right leg was wrapped with a dirty bandage. He looked awful. I tightened my hold on the vine, careful not to make any noise as Arden lowered me further. I was a few yards away from Kino now. When I got closer, I saw what Kino was doing. He was writing on a parchment. At a time like this? Really? He seemed as odd as Mayo sometimes. The night sky was not dark tonight. Instead, Sisis and Luna illuminated the sky, and it was as though they were providing light for Kino, so he could write whatever it was he wanted to pen down. I'm starting to forget how you smile. The way your hand touches my hair on the sides and the way your laughter sounds when I make a crazy joke. I swallowed as the realization hit me that Kino was writing what he was feeling. Was it a diary of sorts? I wished I could forget what I had read. It felt wrong to read something so intimate, no matter how close as friends we were. One of the soldiers was snoring, but the other was wide awake. It would be risky to talk to Kino. I looked up, and I could only imagine Arden peering down at me. I tugged at the vine so that he would stop lowering me. At this distance, I knew that Kino could already copy my power. If only he would check on his power. Instead, Kino continued pouring out his thoughts on the parchment. I looked away because I did not want to read about his feelings anymore. He was hurting. I mean, I would have been devastated if my mother were to die. And to not see her before her death. That would be horrible. I could not think of a way to send a signal to Kino. Look up, I urged inside my head. Look up, Kino. I'm here. I kept on repeating inside my head. But Kino did not pay attention to me. He was oblivious to his surroundings. A thought hit me. I started peeling off some skin from the vine. I did it slowly so that I could pull a lengthy skin. When I was finished, I dangled it below me towards Kino. It was so thin that when it touched Kino's hair, he sat there as though nothing had happened. I tried it again and again until I saw him raise his arm up and scratch at his head. That was the moment I was waiting for. I let the vine skin graze his arm as though to tickle it. It worked. He looked up, his face did not change, and I thought he did not see me. But before he jerked his head back towards his notes, he looked around so abruptly that I knew he had seen my gooey image. In bold letters, he wrote at the back of the parchment. Pyper? He continued scribbling, and I tried to read what he wrote. If it's you, touch me again or give me a sign. The soldier beside him peered at what Kino was doing. What's that, boy? He said. Kino shook his head. Nothing. Some random thoughts, he said. The soldier looked around and upwards to where Kino was staring earlier. The soldier stood up, and he was gazing right through me. I tugged at the vine to signal Arden to pull me up. The soldier was eyeing where I was, but he could not see me. My breath had become loud enough for me to hear. I was unsure if it was just me or if it really came out loud. All I knew was that I could even hear the blood pumping in my ears. I tugged at the vine again, hoping that Arden was watching closely and would decide to pull me up. I crumpled the vine skin I was holding and dropped it on Kino's lap. He stood up, and fear painted his face. The soldier was watching Kino, and then he turned around as though to leave. He had taken only a step forward when the soldier turned around so quickly again, this time with his sword in his hands. He swung it against me. I closed my eyes, held my breath, and prayed that the soldier would miss. The sound of the sword was like a rumble of thunder that made me flinch. I opened my eyes and stared at the soldier, who looked to be satisfied. He was still confused about what Kino was looking at, but because his sword did not touch anything, he gazed up at me one more time without seeing me and sat back down. I let out a breath and pulled at the vine. This time, I felt myself being lifted. While I was being hauled up, Kino bent down to pick up the vine skin, which I had balled before dropping it to him. He folded the parchment he was writing on and tucked it in his belt. The soldier went towards him and bound his wrists. The night is getting crazy. The general will have my head if he sees that I removed the ropes holding you, so back to them you go, he said. When I reached Arden, I was very close to tears, but I told myself I shouldn't cry. We will be able to rescue Kino. Arden looked at me, concern etched upon his face. We'll get him back, he said. At least now he knows we're out here for him, he added as though to console me.